innovation isn't just about big ideas. It's about solving real world problems in ways that are both creative and doable. In this episode, Jack shares how to balance visionary thinking with practical execution so you can stay inventive without getting overwhelmed. We'll be going over the importance of balancing creativity with action, steps to turn ideas into reality, and common pitfalls to avoid when innovating.
There's a fine line between dreaming big and staying stuck in the brainstorming phase. The key is knowing how to move forward without losing that spark.
Hi, and welcome back to our podcast. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Jack, and I'm very excited to do so as he is one of the most creative people I know and is constantly thinking of new ways to do new things, which is the clear definition of some innovation. So we'll start getting with some questions. Jack, so what does innovation look like in practical terms, especially for small businesses and solopreneurs?
Innovation for a small business is a little bit different. You're looking at really the resources and the tools that you have around what you're hoping to accomplish and trying to put new things together with what you have available usually. Now, you may want to step out a little bit and get a new tool for this particular project, but for most cases, you're looking around and saying, I have this, I have this. We haven't put these together before, but let's put them together this time and see if this will solve the problem that we're trying to get to.
Huh. Why do you think so many people feel intimidated by the idea of being innovative?
I think people are uncomfortable by nature with stepping outside of their comfort zone. So, and if they get used to doing a certain process on a certain day of the week on a certain thing, and you, not to be, moving the cheese, being metaphorical, when you change the routine, they're not as comfortable. And so they're not as likely to maybe stretch. So, why are people intimidated to be innovative? I think it has to do with they're stuck in a rut or stuck in a routine, but also it hasn't been nurtured. In other words, they haven't been given the opportunity to be innovative. Because I'm sure in their personal lives, people are very innovative in getting things done in the way and what they have to accomplish. But at work, it's a different environment. So I think creating the space for a person to be creative really would help with innovation within the work structure. And lastly, there's a little bit of intimidation by new tools. Imagine, if you're used to pounding a nail with a hammer and somebody hands you an electric hammer, that's a new way of doing it that you're maybe not used to.
Mhm.
And so getting that comfort or that willingness to try it, I think, is very important to being innovative and not being afraid of the new tool.
Yeah, I also think that like you talked about, is that they're same in and day out, but the idea of being innovation, even in a small business or a solopreneur or any company, it's about thinking of what that day in and day out is and innovating off of that. And so it can be small things like improving a process or rethinking customer interactions, right? I mean, it just how do you make things always just a little bit better, a little bit smoother? Um, so that way you can have a little bit more joy, right? And so it's about solving different problems as innovation rather than this big thing like we invented the iPhone. It can be the small things, like you mentioned.
We were working with a client, and we had this conversation this week where people want to be genuinely innovative, but when it came down to certain things, they didn't want anybody touching their stuff. They had a way of doing things. They didn't want to necessarily embrace a change because they had to get things done. So I think when you think about people's routines, you have to be respectful, but still give them the space to be comfortable with it.
So now somebody is excited to start innovating. And one of the first steps we like to say with any kind of innovation is to brainstorm. But how does one balance like the excitement of brainstorming with the need to actually execute?
Okay. Well, let's go back to brainstorming for a second. I think one of the big things about brainstorming is you have to let the people in the room have their voices heard. And so, as a leader, you may already know the path forward, but let the people speak. Let the people share because you might surprise yourself and they might have a better solution than what you've already envisioned. But give them that openness where you are receptive and you're not trampling over their ideas. Yeah, you might want to take a critique at it at some point, but brainstorm, throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Take that time. But then when it comes down to the execution, everybody's had their voice, right? Everybody's got to say their piece. We're going to agree on a logical next step forward. We're as a team, we're going to agree from there to the next step and the next step and the next step. So everybody's on the same page and the same plan as far as like getting things done. But they had their voices heard, and a lot of their voice will be in those processes that we've defined.
And something we talked about before we started to hit record was the fact that one of the questions I'm asking you is, have you ever worked on a project where you had to pull back on creativity to make it practical? And the answer is like every time. But can you think of a couple of maybe concrete examples in relationship to maybe our experiences in being a small business that might resonate with others?
Oh yeah, that's a great thing. We work with a lot of nonprofits. Patty and I, we put our heart and everything into our projects. But sometimes a client really wants something that is so vastly out of the scope that even their normal budgetary year, it's not sustainable. So you have budget constraints, you have skill sets constraints, you have scope creep. If they're just trying to do something relatively basic and say they want Qualtrics, for example, to be their survey software platform at what, however many thousands of dollars a year, that's not in their budget. They can't necessarily sustain that. So we have to maybe scale that back to meet their immediate need and what they hope to accomplish, but doing it in such a way that it is both achievable and economically efficient. So Patty and I come from big industry where, if somebody dropped a couple $1,000s on a survey platform, that's not a big thing. But when you're dealing with a nonprofit or a small business, that's a major hit to your budgets. And so we try to be respectful of that. And so I think pretty much every time we get into a project development mode, we have the tendency to want to scale it. And we have to pull back our thoughts and our ambitions so that it's still achievable and still able to be done. It may be not be done with the amount of efficiency that another option would do, but we'll get it done.
How can someone who feels overwhelmed by big projects start implementing their ideas that kind of one step at a time that you've mentioned before?
Okay, Patty and I, we talk about the way to eat an elephant. What is the right way to eat an elephant, Patty?
One bite at a time and with friends.
And with friends. So when you got that big, daunting task, and if it's too big for you, be honest with your team, be honest with your clients, be honest with your stakeholders that this is a big project and this is a big to ask. So take a moment, assess what the next first logical step is, and see who can help you to get there. And sometimes it's just that little gentle push or that encouragement that'll get you to move forward. And you know, you start to think about ways to do things efficiently as you're getting into these big projects. And I think that's some of it too, is if you have the time up front, maybe start brainstorming on how those tasks ahead of you can be accomplished with the tools that you have, the skill sets that are available, the resources that can be deployed. Have a thought in advance that when you get to that stage, you've already got a plan of action that you can tackle it without having to proverbially reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, it starts really with the idea of communication, right? It's not just you coming up with your own idea and then you figuring out how to get it, like what the goal is, and then figuring out how to get it done and you doing all of it. There's always an ecosystem of resources that if you learn to communicate in the best ways possible for your type and strategy and for the environment that you're in, you might find you can move forward faster if you take the first few moments to pause and communicate your intent, your goals, and then brainstorm or workshop all the different various tools that are possible to use things that you can do, and then see what others have done that may move you forward quantum jumping wise because of the fact that they may have already done something. That, going back to the conversations we've had with clients this past month, it's it's so surprising still to me that the silos that can exist even when there are a very limited number of people, and some people are doing some things and have made magic and other people are butting their heads against the wall and they could solve each other's problems very easily by talking. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think to some degree you're exactly right, Patty. And I think to some degree you need to take arrogance off the table and be ontologically humble, meaning you don't know everything. You know what you know, and you know what you know very well. But even somebody down on a different floor and a different department may have a better solution to solving that problem if you just talk. Be communicative or talk to these folks and communicate so that there, if there's a better way, at least you put it out there that that way can be explored. And I think you and I do that a lot. Part of what we do with Grounded with Data is when we start a new project, we have our team, our questers and Patty and I, we have an idea how to move things forward, but we empower our team to
Mm-hmm.
to feel like they can communicate and say, you know, have you tried this? Have you thought about this approach or this tact? And Patty and I are usually, brilliant, go for it. That you own that part of it, and we're here to support you now, not the opposite. And I think that helps people to be innovative when they can have that ability to share their thoughts openly and honestly with one another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Switching from systems ideas, let's talk about the pitfalls. How do you help clients who feel stuck because their ideas feel too big to tackle?
That's a good question. Oftentimes, Patty and I will run into clients that feel overwhelmed, and it could be just by having, say, a huge data set, which is often the case, where they have legacy systems and only a few people that can actually access it, and they're feeling overwhelmed by the daunting task of how do we do this? And it usually just starts by we mentioned communication, but getting all those stakeholders at the table and finding out what's where, who knows how to get to that information, how to work with it, and then break it down into manageable steps. The
Mm-hmm.
first step might be to, in a case of a big data set, where it's legacy, so it's been cobbled together over the years with all kinds of different things, is taking the moment to actually map the thing out and find out how it can be joined across the different iterations. So taking that very first step, I think, is always the case of finding out what's where and who can do it. That's always the first step. And it doesn't matter if it's a data set or really building an airplane. And you'll find that the basic tools that you cavemen have used, and I mean that by 19 2000s, yeah, let's go with that. 2000s technology can still solve that same problem today. But you're dealing with a legacy system, but therefore there has to be a legacy person who knows how to use that tool.
Mm-hmm. What do we find is kind of one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make when trying to innovate?
Uh, they mean to shoot for the moon, and what they're really doing is trying to shoot for another galaxy. They are so ambitious, and God bless them, because that's a great thing, right? You want to be innovative, but keep it realistic and keep it manageable. And whenever you start to feel that scope creep, move that to another project, another time. If you're shooting for the moon, by all means, hit the moon. Don't try to take out Saturn or Jupiter in the process. No, you're only trying to get to the moon. And if you do build tools that can get you to Saturn or Jupiter, great.
Hmm.
But that's not the focus. Keep focused and keep pulling it back. And that is this task that I'm doing going to accomplish the objective that I hope to achieve? Or is it so far out of scope that it's really something new? And if
Hmm.
it's new, great, make it new.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
stay on task.
We have a thing that we like to always say is the crawl, walk, run, jetpack. And a lot of times, once somebody says, "Oh, you can come and you can solve all of our problems," they go to jetpack of wanting the problem solved. It's like, wait a minute, you're at like, I mean, some of you are in crawl and there's some toddling happening, but nobody's at running yet. And there are different stages of innovative growth based on what you even have the mental capacity to do. And also the keep it simple, sweetheart, the idea of entrepreneurs doing the minimum viable product, of trying to solve a problem first and then figuring out how to get that scaled and automated. Like some people rush to saying they want things automated and they want data moved, but they didn't even think through all the questions that they would be wanting to ask of data. And we've had a client before where we started to move the data because we were like, "Are you sure you don't want an alignment session where we can figure out all the data points I want moving?" They're like, "No, we want this, 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 and this." And we're like, "All right, well, let's just have a session where we get together with some of the people to talk about some things, make life easier." And I slipped in a little alignment in there for them. And and we found out that the stuff that they were asking us to move, the questions that they felt that they really wish they could answer, where it would help them leap forward, by leaps and bounds. We weren't moving that anywhere. It was still difficult to answer. So then we did another project where we got it all out and into something where they could finally learn from it. But they were so gung ho on solving one problem, they didn't think about, like, what about all the other things? So,
Yeah, I never want to dampen anybody's enthusiasm. And it's
mm,
great that they want to accomplish the big objective, right?
hmm.
But sometimes I think leaders get so hung up on they heard a buzzword someplace and they want that buzzword to become their reality without really truly understanding the ask. And that's great. We want to encourage that. That is a goal, but you might be several steps from getting to that point. And I think as leaders, we have to be often realistic with ourselves and what we want to accomplish. Do we understand that well enough ourselves to make the ask to our team? And then, secondly, within that construct, is do you have the organizational will to move that forward? So, if you have a team that is on the verge of burnout because of the nature of your work, and you try to put a little thing on top of them, that's a huge stressor. Is that the most important thing that you want to accomplish at this moment? Reduce the stress first, and then start to build those iterations of what you hope to
Hmm.
accomplish.
Yeah.
But understand it yourself first. So if you want a dashboard, you know why you want a dashboard. You have an idea what's going to be in the dashboard. Not that you heard the term you need a dashboard and you don't know what a dashboard is. Take a moment. Take a moment.
Mm. So we've talked a little bit about entrepreneurship and small businesses and things, and we do work with a lot of small businesses that have been around um, for more than 5+ years. That's when they start really thinking about, oh, how should I actually be growing? But they also, some are, at least our client, well, the ones we work with are the ones that say, I should be growing. Can I do better? But then there's also the ones that go, no, I'm all right, just doing what I'm doing. Which, is all well and good, but we also know that, we're here on this planet to always evolve and make everyone's lives, including our own, just a touch better. And just doing the same thing over and over again may not always have that same impact. So, how does one keep the spirit of innovation alive in a business that's been running for years?
That's a good question. Okay, because there's a tendency just to live within the status quo. We talked earlier about our daily routines and all that. So, how do we get the spirit of innovation when you have a team that is feeling like they have to manage their daily routine? Is as a leader, you need to create the space to be innovative and the permission structure so that if somebody has been moving the same papers from the left to the right side of their desk 7 or 5 days a week, 24 or I'm sorry, 40 hours a week, they're moving that same paper. Start asking by asking the question, do they need to be moving that paper?
Hmm.
Is this even within the paper? Are there smaller chunks of paper that can be moved? And then when you start to break it down, you might find that they might have a better, excuse me, a better solution for removing that paper than when they picked up that job. So create the space and the permission structure to allow people to get innovative, especially when people have hit a rut. I mean, without being judgmental, have a sit down and say, okay, this is our process. These are the steps that we have been taking. What do you think? Is there more efficient? Can we feng shui this? Patty and I love the word feng shui and the whole concept of it. Now, it can be done at an organizational level too, with any process. You can make it more efficient, more logical, more succinct, so that people will have that space, if you let them, to innovate the system and become more effective or more efficient. But then, within the new space and more time that you've achieved from doing that differently, then you can do other innovations that are on your wish list.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, congratulations, you have a sustainable company and you've had, 80, 90% of your employees have been around for 5+ years. That's wonderful. But then you finally hire, like somebody retires and you hire a new person, and the new person goes, "Oh my gosh, you're still doing this way? Oh."
Mac 87, yay.
And and I think that's sometimes the big, a big wake up call. And I'm not saying bring on new people as turnover, but continue that curiosity and the learning, and set aside regular time for that learning and improvement for everyone, to always get a little better at their job or learn what the new trends are or the new technologies. Another thing we come across with clients is that they've had the same CRM for, 10 years, maybe 5, whatever, whatever it is, but they've had it for so long. But when they bought it, they bought the base package. And then as they started to grow, they started to look elsewhere for other components to add on because they were ready to do new things. But they never went back to the CRM and said, what am I missing? What haven't I upgraded on? What are your new capabilities? We had one client who, she had this one CRM, and we were talking about marketing and landing pages and the whole process and stuff. And we're like, your CRM can like do that, right? There's a whole new marketing component they added on 2 years ago. And she was like, what? Yeah, so it's just in the spirit of learning, in the spirit of keeping innovation alive, take that time and stay
You know,
open to that feedback and evolving ideas from others.
that's a very good point. Is that periodically have a review of your tool set and your skill set
Hmm.
and your
Hmm.
resources. So, in other words, you got a new saw 20 years ago. Pull out the user manual on that. Do a quick Google search to find out if there has been an update to that
Hmm.
saw that will make things more efficient. I'm just using a basic tool
Yeah.
here,
Hmm.
but it could be your CRM. It could be your version of Office, for goodness sake. You could be still using an old version of Office where you can, if you got the upgrade on it, you might be able to do some more advanced things or more easily.
Hmm.
Uh, One thing I love in Excel is doing goal sheet. So you can have Excel actually solve for a number,
Hmm.
right? Surprise, right? It's a spreadsheet. but it's such an easy tool to use. If you don't know it's there, you might try to reinvent the wheel every time you need to solve something. And since it
Yeah.
works within a relational database, a relational structure, it knows where all the factors that drive that goal is, and it can change it like this. But
Mm-hmm.
if you get your person who's been working with an older version of Excel, even though Goal Seek's been around for a while, but they may not know that. So
Mm-hmm.
take a look at your resources and try to see what else they would like to know too.
Mm-hmm. A more modern example that we've been saying a lot is with even like ChatGPT. Every month something new is coming up with what its capabilities are. I haven't even had time to show you how we can now make 5-second videos with Sora. Like it's just every month there's something new. And so we always encourage our clients and anyone that I get to speak in front of about AI for everyone is treat ChatGPT like it is a member or an employee of your company and it has a job description. And what should you do with a job description with people? Reevaluate what their new capabilities are and what they've learned and readjust their job description of how you can do it and use it. Do the same thing with all your software platforms. Have an annual review of the tech opportunities and options. Because Jack and I do that, we've found new tools that are actually do more and are less expensive because they're new, but they're doing gangbusters. So we move over as a small business. We make that decision that's the better path forward for us. But you have to take the time to review that information on the regular basis.
And in that spirit, um, when you look at your organization and your organization's culture, if it's siloed or not, if people are insulated from one another and that there's not really a cross pollination. If you're starting to explore tools like Chat GPT or other apps, make sure that there's cross pollination so that everybody has access to that tool. That way, you don't have one department trying to innovate this and come up with a solution, and another department starting off from zero to do the same thing that that department has just done. So
Mm-hmm.
try to get some cross pollination across that, or at least pull down those silos, because you will find that you'll be able to innovate much more efficiently. And periodically, pull down the silos, have everybody at lunch, and let's have a talk about the latest technology and the tools that you are using for your job. Anybody know anything new about ChatGPT? Patty and I will tell you though, the one caveat we have with ChatGPT is to treat it like an intern. Now, if you were to just pick it up, you would think this is the greatest thing ever. We're not going to challenge it. We're not going to critique it. We're not going to do anything. Take that space to actually say, okay, this is an intern. This is a new member of my team. Treat it as such, but realize that it is fallible. So not every tool is a perfect tool. So keep that in mind. You might need to have other layers of insulation there too.
Mm-hmm. So, based on the conversation and the questions I've asked, and the fact that you, Jack, as one of your geniuses, is you can download juicy nuggets of insights that we didn't even know a person needed to hear, but when you say it, their minds are blown. No pressure. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this conversation that you feel like somebody who's listening right now really needs to hear?
You know, I think the theme that Patty and I had throughout this conversation is the importance of communication. And it's a basic tool, and it really will solve a lot of other questions with innovation. So make sure you're communicating with your team, your stakeholders, even the other team that you really don't want to talk to. Communicate with them. They're good people. Invite them in. Go out and go bowling. You'll be surprised what you can learn innovatively, or in a context of what new tools or new ideas or new ways are available by just going out and doing something recreationally with another person from another department. I mean, you would be surprised what you can learn from a pizza and a beer and a game of bowling. Of course, root beer, right? Root beer, right? Let's go with that. But yeah, communication is your greatest tool. Use it. Be innovative with that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for spending time with us today. We're always grateful for your energy, and we hope that you enjoyed ours. Some of the things that we talked about today, was like, innovation. It's about problem solving, not perfection, not shooting for another galaxy, not, um, trying to build that jetpack. It's just trying to solve good problems, and prioritize ideas that then align with your goals and your resources, budget constraints, time constraints, capability, capacity, all of those things. When you have the goals, you have to move in a way that works for everyone to get there. You cannot steamroll your way to an end if you're needing to utilize others, which pretty much all of us do in our day to day. And always break the big ideas into manageable steps and test them early. Test them through communicating what the idea is. Test them through communicating what others may have done or tools they may have used. Keep testing by communicating, and then when you can get into the work, you're going to move forward faster.
That's a great point, Patty. I'm going to share one thing for leaders to consider. Who here has seen the movie A Beautiful Mind about Professor Nash? He was a brilliant scientist, political scientist. One of his theories is called governing dynamics. And what he argued was that sometimes the root of conflict is just different views of efficiency on how to solve the same problem. So when you're thinking about, you got an idea, you have a problem in your organization, you need to solve it, where the conflict might lie is how, the vision of how to get that problem solved. So imagine we're walking down by a lake and we see somebody out there flailing. One person might say, "Oh my gosh, call 911." Another guy might say, "Quick, get a boat." Another person might try jumping in. And yet another person might just say, "Stand up, it's 2 feet deep." The conflict rises that everybody had a solution to help that flailing person in that lake. Which one's more efficient? Well, you as a leader, that's for you to decide. Take the moment to hear the different solutions that are on the table. Listen. Then decide and chart a path forward on how you can be innovative within the constraints that you have for your organization. And then I'll leave you with this. You don't need to be a visionary genius to innovate. Start small, take action, and let your creativity grow with each step forward.
And so, one thing that, you can do today is reflect on that one idea that you've been sitting on. Something to move your business forward, something to move your department forward, something to help your nonprofit grow, and write down a first step to take action. And what should that one action step be? Talk about it to others. Yes. So, all right. Now, we also have a bunch of grounded with data resources at your fingertips to learn more about how to grow your business through various factors and operational efficiency. And so we invite you to go to our website, groundedwithdata.com/resources, and you can access these free tools that might help you assess what your next big idea is. Thank you.
Thank you.